Hi, I'm Melissa Manning, and today we're diving into the new menu regulations for the 2025-2026 school year with some key updates on food additives and ultra processed foods. But first, a little about myself. I'm the founder and consulting dietitian for My School RD. I started consulting in the early 2000s, and I've also had the privilege of working as an auditor for the California Department of Education. I love doing deep dives on school nutrition subjects and found the proposed and passed regulations on ultra processed foods to be really interesting. To create this presentation, I interviewed over 20 school food manufacturers, just curious about their thoughts and their challenges, and how are they approaching this new waves of school nutrition scrutiny. Here's an overview of our session today. First, we'll talk about what's in our meals and address the buzz around school food additives, ultra processed foods, and artificial colors. Then we'll discuss new regulations for this coming school year and how to navigate the changes. Finally, we'll end by exploring how school nutrition is really leading the charge in improving children's health in America. I am so excited about what school nutrition is up to. So, what are ultra processed foods, otherwise known as UPFs? Well, they don't have a precise legal definition yet, but we generally recognize them as foods containing artificial dyes, flavors, artificial sweeteners and preservatives, emulsifiers, and other additives. These foods are shelf stable, highly palatable, they taste great, and they're convenient. But they have been loosely linked, at least, to chronic disease like obesity, type 2 diabetes, and heart disease. Particularly, artificial dyes are under scrutiny for their association with hyperactivity and neurobehavioral issues in children. The state of California did not start this when everybody else started this whole scrutiny over ultra processed foods and additives. They actually started several years back before it was the latest trend. So they passed in October 2023 AB 418. This bill began addressing food safety with a focus on food additives, specifically targeting brominated vegetable oil, potassium bromate, propyl paraben, and the infamous red dye 3. Now, there's not a lot of foods that have those first three ingredients, but we've all heard about red dye 3. The law mandates that manufacturers must reformulate or pull all the affected products from California by January 1st, 2027. So they gave them a pretty good long deadline of 4 years to make this happen. Next came the bill AB 2316, which was passed in September 2024 and effective December 31st, 2027. So again, a few years leeway. This bill expands its focus to include all synthetic food dyes such as red, blue, green, and yellow, as well as titanium dioxide. It directly impacts school nutrition, this one. So it's not just across the state or anything, it's just what's served in schools. And it impacts both food and drinks from before the school starts all the way up through 30 minutes after, meaning that if there's a food truck or anything else, maybe sales of a fundraiser that happen up to 30 minutes after school ends, then those products would be banned as well. Next, let's look at AB 1264. This bill aims to finally officially define what is an ultra processed food. The deadline for that is July 1st, 2026. So, we just really even don't know for sure how people want to define that. Then schools will need to phase these foods out beginning on January 1st of 2028 and banning them fully by January 1st, 2032. So that gives us 7 years to start working on that. I also had some other questions like, what about our commodity brown box foods? We have no control over what we get. It's really been just hard to find out what allergens are in them. So let's take a look at that. It's so important to know what's in our foods, and the commodities are such an essential part of school nutrition. Um, I really wanted to do a deep dive on this subject. So I spent a whole weekend researching all the commodity brown box vendors, what their ingredients lists are, and what's the goods on UPFs. So it was really fascinating and surprising that all of the commodity brown box items for grains, vegetables, and fruits were free of the commonly defined ultra processed ingredients, including the artificial colors. So that was pretty exciting. And then when it came to meat alternates, there were some surprises as well. For example, cheddar cheese and American cheese. I did not realize that something as what I think of as minimally processed as product as cheddar cheese would have artificial colors in it. See, cheddar cheese actually is a white cheese and coloring is added to make it orange. And so sometimes the vendors for USDA, the manufacturers are adding a yellow natural substance called annatto, but then other times some of the products, just depending on who they send you, it could contain yellow and red and orange food coloring. So that was one that really surprised me again. And then there was some that were less surprising. There was beef taco meat and hamburger patties and beef crumbles. Some of them contained something called caramel coloring. Now, caramel coloring is not in our list for California, but it has been identified on some other states' lists. And furthermore, complicating things, caramel coloring has 4 different varieties. So there's caramel 1, 2, 3, and 4. And it's 3 and 4 that are really getting banned in different places. So some of those brown meats contained caramel coloring, or would say contained colors, and those were not identified. So they may or may not also contain some of these UPFs. Hard to know. But overall, my impression was that the commodity foods were much lower in our artificial colors than I realized, and that was good news. So, say you want to guarantee that there's no artificial colors in your school meals, then really the way that we can exercise some control over that is by processing our commodities through manufacturers. And then you can read exactly what's in that product. And if the label says color added, you can ask that actual manufacturer, is this an artificial food color? Is this one of the ones that are targeted on the do not buy list? Or are they opting for natural coloring agents like annatto? And when reaching out to manufacturers, what I found surprisingly and really honestly, it was pretty exciting. Many manufacturers are already ahead of the curve. They have already reformulated their products to remove the artificial colors long before the regulations require it and replace that color added with that annatto natural vegetable color. So let's say, we're busy. We have a lot of products that we purchase in school nutrition, a whole lot of variety. And so to keep from being overwhelmed, I wanted to provide a tip of how to figure out where these artificial colors might be hiding. And then you can apply this at home as well if you'd like to start eliminating those from your diet of yourself and your families. So, first rule of thumb is brightly colored foods. Foods like bright orange cheese flavored chips, fruit snacks, fruit filled snack bars, toaster pastries, even unfortunately the like frosting in the conchas, our favorite pan dulce. Those contain oftentimes our artificial colors. So anything that is going to be super brightly colored, sprinkles even, and then one that surprised me was the frozen juice and even fresh juice and frozen juice slushy cups. Like those bright blues are not natural. Those are definitely artificial colors. So whenever looking at like what should I target first, look for those brightly colored foods and any mention of color added. Beyond the school lunch is a la carte foods. And so I wanted to mention those real quick as well. We are allowed to offer some fruit snacks or leathers at a la carte, as well as things like electrolyte sports drinks and ice creams. Again, those brightly colored items are also oftentimes artificial color filled. Now, as I was interviewing different manufacturers, I was really, again, surprised and delighted to hear that they are already ahead of the game on this. And so, one of those example conversations was Buena Vista. I asked them about it, and immediately they handed me paperwork documentation that showed all the changes that they had already made starting July 1st of this school year in their brightly colored cookie products. They're holiday cookies. And it's just such a neat thing to see that the artificial blues and greens were using spirulina. And now instead of artificial red food coloring, they're using beet juice. Annatto is used for orange and yellow colors, and turmeric makes a beautiful gold yellow um, color. So, all these wonderful school friendly and compliant products are being developed for our children. Another interesting thing that I found was in talking with General Mills, I found out that they had already tried to do this before. And actually, it kind of didn't work because the public pushed back on it. So they're all for it. They're happy to make these upgrades to the products, and in 2015, they actually did remove all their artificial dyes and used natural color extracts. Now, some of those come out a little more dull. So, those bright blues and greens, especially, are very hard to replicate. They're just a little bit of a difference in that color. So in 2016, they'd almost reformulated everything, but then consumers started to complain. They said it looked different. And, the bright colors, they were like, what happened to the cereal? It's got something wrong with it. So unfortunately, in 2017, they had to start reintroducing the artificial colors again due to complaints. And if you've done a little bit of digging into the artificial colors or heard the news about it, Doritos got really picked on, as well as things like Flamin' Hot Cheetos. So PepsiCo granted me some time with their corporate dietitian, and we had a delightful conversation where she shared with me the challenges to reformulating in such a very, very fast time period. They did things like they actually reached out to farmers and asked them if they would start growing paprika so that they could make those changes fast. And they super shortened the timeline for school nutrition in particular. So in school nutrition, we are already getting artificial color-free products. They're producing them just for us. And it's going to take another couple of years before they get out to the general market at the grocery stores. But basically, that means that they've just really jumped through a lot of hoops and worked very hard to turn this over to a new product very fast. So let's take a look at that. Here you can see a timeline. It is already August, and they have already changed most of the products over. There's a really everything else that's not on this list that's sold in school nutrition already was artificial color free. So this is just really a pretty major overhaul, especially given the volume of foods that they needed to change. They're a major manufacturer, and so this was a lot of product that they needed to get quick. A lot of new natural food colors needed to be figured out with procurement and such. And then also just making sure the flavor was spot on with what the kids recognize. I also found it really fascinating that there's some insights into reformulating products that I hadn't considered, such as that artificial colors are super stable. They last forever, they never degrade. So, using natural ones required changes to the packaging and shelf life management. But overall, they went through all of that and really put 100% into it. And it really just shows just yet another example of how manufacturers are so committed to improving the formulations that align with kids, our national and our state health standards for kids. They're really just making it happen, which is really exciting. There was one other thing, a little complication that I really need to mention in this, and that it's the reformulations can introduce new allergens. So, for example, the artificial colors didn't have any allergens in them, but the natural colorants now are requiring the use of emulsifiers. One very common emulsifier is soy lecithin. So now we're seeing, especially soy and wheat, being declared as additional allergens in products that are being changed over. So it's really important this year to double check product labels on the box for any new allergens, such as soy and wheat. These may appear due to the changes, and we really don't know when the product is going to make its way from the manufacturer to distributor to a warehouse to our stock. So just keep an eye on those boxes. If you see any box change, then let everybody else know too. So all these action steps can be done, and you're really on the front line of protecting the students. Reading those ingredient labels is just going to be really important this year. Again, reporting any changes promptly. If you see them at your school, then there's probably other schools around you in the district that are receiving the new product and have the new allergen as well. Oftentimes, we rely on product documentation up in the district office to be able to know what the allergens are. And this product documentation is not sent out from manufacturers typically. We don't know when the new product is going to be received. So there's no way for people to know in the office that there is new allergen that's been introduced into a certain food. So again, we're really relying on our staff. Teamwork makes the dream work and keeps kids safe. So moving beyond UPFs and into the new meal pattern regulations for this school year, first of all, we have potatoes at breakfast. We are now limited to serving one serving of potatoes or hash browns as a fruit at breakfast once a week. We can use it as a fruit, but if offered more than once a week, another vegetable subgroup must also be provided. And then there's whole milk. Whole milk is allowed, but it may push the saturated fat content over the weekly limit. So be cautious when including it on menus. I don't really honestly recommend it. I've not been able to make it work due to the saturated fat limits, and it's quite high in saturated fats. And did you know, speaking of ultra processed, milk substitutes like soy milk and rice milk are considered ultra processed. And they often contain long ingredients lists to try and make them mimic dairy milk and the nutritional profile. So you have to do a lot to make an almond or a grain of rice turn into the nutrient dense cow's milk. Another new regulation this year is our start of limiting sugar. So we have sugar limits in dairy and cereal products. And for flavored milk, the rule is no more than 10 grams of added sugar is allowed per 8-ounce serving. Now, as you can see on this label of chocolate fat free milk, the total sugars is only 7 grams of added sugar. This has been the same amount that vendors like Driftwood Dairy and Producers Dairy have been using for a long time. But this definitely does not match what's served in the grocery store. What is being sold in the grocery store is way higher than this. Now let's look at breakfast cereals. Breakfast cereals may have no more than 6 grams of added sugars per dry ounce. Now, the cereal companies have been reducing the sugar in cereals for quite some time, and that's because CACFP has had reduced sugars be required for many, many years. General Mills has a regulation ready cereals list, which you can access through the QR code. And there's also, if you're like a sugar, you're curious about deep diving into sugars, there is a QA in the other QR code that I found to be super interesting. And there's some other states that just put out really interesting materials, and this was one of them. Now let's look at our post or malto meal cereals, 1 and 2 ounce. They've listed the total added sugars and whether it meets the criteria of the 6 grams. They're on the right hand side. And in that final column on the right, you can see it's all stars the whole way down. So every single one of their products meets the sugar limits. Now let's move on to yogurt. Yogurt manufacturers like Danimals and Yoplait have reduced their sugar a long time ago due to CACFP regulations. So I wanted to go beyond that and look at, say, a Driftwood 8-ounce yogurt. That wasn't really used much for CACFP. Using the limit of 2 grams of sugar per ounce added, if you have an 8-ounce serving, times 2 grams of sugar, you get 16 grams of added sugar that's allowed in an 8-ounce serving. So as we look here at the Driftwood label, it says includes 14 grams of added sugars. So it is under the limit. Then moving on to the 5-pound tub of vanilla yogurt, it says includes 11 grams of added sugars, and it's for 3/4 of a cup. Now, 3/4 of a cup is 6 ounces. 6 times 2 is 12. Added sugars are 11. So once again, it meets the requirement. And then I was looking at Yummy. And sometimes I come across a Yummy yogurt because it's lactose free and it's offered in schools. So looking at that, again, an 8-ounce yogurt, how many grams of sugar, added sugar can it have? 16 grams of added sugar. Now this label says 19 grams of added sugar, so would it meet the requirement? It does not. However, I have been told through the grapevine that they are working on a school nutrition product that does meet the limit, but it just kind of goes to show that The main school nutrition products do meet the limits, but going beyond that, if we're at the grocery store buying a Yummy yogurt or buying a different brand that's not school nutrition, it may not meet that yogurt and be much higher in sugar. So, along those lines, looking at what the consumers are able to purchase, what they are purchasing, what those products look like versus school nutrition, it really goes to say that school nutrition is truly leaders in public health. School nutrition is so ahead of the consumer market, reducing sugars, adding whole grains in cereals. That started with school nutrition way before hitting grocery shelves. There's no fryers or fried foods in our kitchens, unlike, say, a McDonald's or fast food. Our transparency is really unmatched. I love this. Product formulation statements, they tell us exactly how much chicken is in our chicken and how much beef is in our beef. And now, ultra processed free meals with none of those artificial colors are really the only place that we can reliably find uh, artificial color free meals in our food supply. Going beyond whole grains, added sugars, and ultra processed artificial food colors, we also do things like introduce students to new and fresh foods all the time. Fresh fruits and vegetable programs, farm to school, and harvest of the month are just a few things that we're doing to improve the health of our students. And as a dietitian, I really love this one. I did another deep dive on school nutrition superfoods and was like, wow, actually, there's a lot. Most school menus in California regularly feature things like broccoli, romaine lettuce, kale, spinach, blueberries, sweet potatoes, Greek yogurt. We have eggs and beans and whole grains, and those are the norm. And these are superfoods that are just super nutritious that dietitians love. It may be a mystery what used to be in school nutrition meals, but today's school nutrition meal, there is no mystery meat. We have full transparency, and our manufacturers are truly dedicated to making sure that better products are being offered to students. So, again, with those product formulation statements, it's time to start looking at them as our commitment to transparency. We really don't know what's in a chicken nugget when we go to a restaurant or how much actual meat is in the meat that they're serving us. Like, lunch meat has a ton of fillers in it, but our lunch meat manufacturers have to state exactly how much actual raw turkey is in the turkey, how much pork is in a pork based ham. They have to disclose that information and sign to it. So, I mean, the truth is, the mystery meat is really what's on our grocery store shelves and in our restaurant foods. It is not in school nutrition. So I just wanted to start this school year just really celebrating. We have so many leadership values in school nutrition. We are doing the hard things that other people just don't want to do. Like, that it's hard for the parents to get their kids to eat these picky things. And we do it despite all the pickiness of kids and competing with parents and fast food restaurants. We have transparent, values driven leadership. We set goals beyond compliance, as you've seen manufacturers just getting on the bandwagon with removing artificial colors from our foods. Like, your program is doing what others aren't. What the families aren't able to do, your program is doing with these whole grains and other foods, introducing new things that kids have never seen before. The ultra processed food bans are happening in schools first. We are setting the wave of artificial free color foods. And it is basically the only place you can eat a guaranteed artificial color-free meal in America. It's going to be school nutrition. It is not going to be our restaurants, and it's not going to be our grocery store shelves. It's going to be here. So I invite everybody to take a moment, think about the things that you're doing in school nutrition that are really hard, even budget, like producing these meals at such a low price that have so many superfoods, in there. So I just want everybody to take a moment to think about your school nutrition wins, to celebrate the hard things that you're doing, and you're doing them anyways, all for the health of our students. So thank you. And that's the end of my session. If you have any questions, please ask someone in charge. You want to reach out to me, have a conversation. I'd love to hear your wins as well. And I just want to thank you for listening today. Bye bye.